I've been on NoSleep for a while now, almost, I'll admit foolishly, desiring to experience something similar, a story to nervously recall around campfires and use as an icebreaker on awkward first dates. It wasn't until talking with an old friend, Gavin, this morning, that I realized I already have that story. It's just one of those things that never registers until your mind is led in its direction. Let me give you some background. Memories of 6th grade are hazy for me, as I'm sure they are for most of you. I went to a sort of specialty school, for lack of a better phrase, focused on education in outdoors and developing 6th graders' independence and self-reliance before entering into middle school and high school. I remember thousands of my city's kids applied for the 60 places. I was thrilled to get in. My mom was even happier. She saw the experience as something I desperately needed. I'd grown up without a dad. She told me he died before I was born. We never talked about it. She seemed to harbor some sort of hatred or bitterness towards my father, for whatever reason. Growing up, I always assumed she resented him for leaving her to raise me on her own. It seemed unfair to me, being as young as I was, but I didn't dare question her reasoning. We took a class camping trip late in the school year, May, I think, up in the north of the state. This week stands out in my mind. I can remember it all vividly, hiking and kayaking, even axe throwing and archery. It was a paradise for a 12-year-old. All 60 students had split up into partners, mine of course being Gavin, and each of these pairs sorted into groups around 10, led by a teacher or volunteer counselor. These groups would often rotate their activities and locations each of the 7 days, sleeping in the cabins a few nights, going on backpacking trips, and camping out in the woods another night. There were a few other specific experiences I can't remember. The night in question, however, remains clear in my memory. It was what we'd referred to as Survival Night, the legendary final test for us students. We were given a gallon of water, a tarp, a few matches, and a bag of food items, and sent off into the woods at least a mile away from the nearest other kids or teacher. Obviously, it wasn't meant to be hard, but back then, it had intimidated even the bravest of our class, Gav and I included. I remember we took turns trying to scare each other on the hike to the campsite. "You've got the matches, right?" I asked. Gavin feigned panic, frantically patting down his pockets and reveling in the fear that bloomed across my face before pulling them from his jacket. "Relax, man," he said, bursting into a fit of laughter. "Very funny. You really think I'd forgot the matches? I believe you're the one that's been losing everything," he laughed. It was true. So far I'd managed to lose 4 or 5 articles of clothing, my journal, and my schedule of what days we'd be doing what. I was almost scared to go home and tell my mom about the clothes. "So, what's the worst case scenario? What do you think?" "What? What do you think is the worst thing that could happen to us tonight? Ghosts? Maybe a bear? Ghost bears?" Ghosts, definitely," I smiled. "You're seriously comparing the two?" "Well, a bear would just kill you. Sure, it'd hurt, but after that, it'd be over," I said, cutting him off. "Ghosts, well, that's a different story. They'd kill you and haunt you after you're dead." "Ghosts can't kill people. And what kind of ghost would haunt another ghost? What's the fun in that? I'll tell you what kind of ghost. A vengeful one. I outstretched my arms and hung them over Gavin's head, letting out an ooh and wagging my fingers. Your ghost impression needs work, dude. Before we knew it, we were there. We draped the tarp over a low-hanging branch and gathered sticks and dead leaves for our fire. We already mutually agreed to keep the fire going and stay up through the entire night. That, of course, would take more wood than our 12-year-old minds had planned. We ran out around 11 p.m. I'll go look around there, said Gavin, shining his flashlight behind him into a grove of aspen trees. You check over there. I stood up, brushing the dirt off my jeans, and started towards the area he'd indicated. It wasn't long before I noticed it, a glimpse of bright red as I moved my flashlight. My adolescent curiosity took over, and I approached it. It was a backpack leaning against the trunk of a tall pine, one of those that looked perfect for climbing. I grabbed it without a second thought and examined it in the light. It was old and tattered, with rips in the nylon and missing zippers. Gav, I found something, I yelled over to him, dragging it to the fire. Check this out. He returned with an armful of sticks, letting them fall to the ground and approaching me. What is that? A backpack? That's not yours, is it? No, it was by a tree over there. That's so cool. Should we open it? Or... I don't know. Maybe it belongs to... I paused in the middle of the thought. Jack? In one of the rips, I caught a glimpse of something. It was the corner of a leather-bound notebook. But it couldn't be. Jack! Is that my journal? I whispered. What? What do you mean? I ignored his question, ripping the bag open to reveal a gallery of my things. My mind faltered. I felt waves of nausea and disbelief batter me from the inside. Dude, is that your hat? And that's our schedule? I don't remember much of what happened next. We sprinted to our assigned teacher's tent, struggling to explain it all coherently when we arrived. The police were called. Teachers and counselors led us out of the woods, and the next morning at breakfast, we were informed the trip had been cut short, and we were going home that day. I wish this story had a definitive ending, both for my sake and yours. What I can leave you with is Gavin and I's phone conversation from this morning. Does it bother you that they've never found the guy? That's a scary thought. Whoever he was, he had a hard-on for us especially. I spoke, letting out a little nervous laughter. What? What are you talking about? I felt my stomach sink. What are you talking about? Don't you think we would have been the first ones to know if they had? There was an uncomfortable silence before Gavin spoke again. Didn't your mom tell you? No. What? Tell me what? They definitely caught the guy. Arrested him the same night it all happened. Or rearrested, I guess. Gav chuckled. Again, there was a pause in conversation. You okay, Jack? Rearrested? I managed. Yeah, he was an escaped convict. Can you believe that? Oh, and you haven't even heard the craziest part. The guy had the same last name as you. What a coincidence, huh?